As he pivoted around us, it just like eye contact as he's spinning away. And he just spins around us perfectly, just missing him. And he goes into the embankment, the center embankment. So the song goes, what do you do when you've done it all? Cannonball. My question is, when you cannonballed a dozen times, what do you do? That's always been a conundrum. I've cannonballed a lot in a lot of different cars in a lot of situations. And I'm always open to new adventures and ideas. And I was like, you know what? I shut the 2904 down and we had done that 8 times over 10 years. And I'm like, I'm done. I did Ben's, C2C race and that was fun. But a friend of mine, Pierce Plam, who was my friend since high school, and he's done half a dozen cannonballs with me. He's always the idea man. He's always calling me up with crazy ideas. And one day he calls up and he's all like, we need to do kind of another cannonball event. I'm like, I'm so done with that. No. And he's like, no, listen to me. He goes, the problem with cannonball events is it takes like 5 days. Even though the run is 2 days or hopefully less than 2 days. You have to get there, that takes a day or two. You do the run and then you got to get home. And it's for a lot of people, that's an entire vacation time that they got to take off. He goes, what if you could do an event like that, but it only took a weekend? I'm like, all right, tell me more. He's like, instead of going from one place to another, we talk about a distance covered. He goes, we do it for time and see how far you can go in a time. I'm like, this is interesting. And he's like, 18 hours. And he goes, just not even a full day. He goes, how far can you drive in 18 hours? And we meet somewhere. And we all start from different places in the country. And eventually we kind of honed the idea, over a few months I'm thinking about it. I'm like, okay, all right, this is interesting. And the idea was, where would everybody in the country meet? Because it's unfair. Like the guys in New York have to start in New York and then they drive to California, they got to get back. And then every time I did it, I'd have to get my car to New York and then drive to California. Let's meet in the middle of the United States. So there's a place in Kansas that is the exact center of the continental United States. We're like, okay, if that's the dead center, then all we got to figure out is how far you can drive before you get there. Like we all meet there at a specific time. We pick noon on a certain day and we do that. I was like, I don't want to organize this. I've organized so many of these events. I was exhausted and the exposure is really hard. So I was like, you know what, Pierce, if you want to do it, that's fine. Or if you want somebody else to do it, but I'm out. A few months later, it's Pierce's birthday on December 6th. I'm like, maybe we should do something for his birthday. So I called him up and I said, how about we, just the two of us, just for fun, your 50th birthday, let's just rent a car and do the 18. We'll just go, we'll drive somewhere near us, 18 hours, and we'll go to Kansas, we'll have a beer and a birthday cake, and then we'll fly home. And it'll just be a weekend. How about that? He's like, that's a great idea. I go, that'd be my birthday present to you. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's not enough, really. So I did organize something, unbeknownst to him. So the day comes, it's December 6th, and we go down to the Sacramento airport to rent a vehicle because we're just going to fly back there. So it works perfect. We just fly back, we grab our car and leave. And we end up getting a Chevy Tahoe, a white Chevy Tahoe, which is perfect because a lot of municipalities use a white Tahoe as a police vehicle. So sort of undercover. Another thing Pierce didn't know is that I also invited our friend Scotty Paz, who cannonballed in 2008 with Pierce, to just show up at the airport. So we're in line getting for the rental car, and Scotty walks up and is all, hey, how's it going? What are you guys doing here? What a coincidence. And Pierce is like, what's going on? He's like, I'm going with you. So the three of us end up grabbing it. And we didn't prep it at all. Well, let me put a caveat on that. We did prep it in humorous ways. I've never been a one for laser jammers and all the gadgets and screens and all of that. I've done all my cannonballs with nothing but a cell phone. And for me, it's because I don't need all that beeping and squeaking and noise. It distracts me. It takes away from the experience. But we did dress up the inside of it. We made up the Police Spotter 3000, which essentially was a piece of cardboard with 2 holes cut in it that you could look through on the dashboard. I had an old snooper, I think, radar detector from like 1980 that didn't work that we put on the rear view. And then on the roof, we duct taped some binoculars and called them like the Ocular 4000 or something as a gag, because I wanted to make a video of us breaking the cannonball record with this thing, which I did as an April Fool's joke the next year. So we dressed it up goofily and had fun with it. We figured out the strategy for this was that you had to start at speed. Like, you didn't want to start stopped. The best thing to do would be starting at, when that clock ticked, that you were already at 100 miles an hour at a specific spot. And that's exactly what we did. We got the truck up to Reno, we took pictures in front of the signs, and then we hopped on the freeway, and we started at 4 o'clock on whatever that day was, Friday or Saturday. And took video of us and the odometer and everything. It turns 4 o'clock, we're at speed, bam, and we're off. Obviously, most of cannonballing is just driving, you know, and we're trying to cover a lot of speed. The distance we covered was impressive, but we had a couple of moments in between the beginning and the end that I've never had before cannonballing. And one of them was, we got through Nevada, it started getting dark, we get through Utah. Utah is always a piece of cake. You just blow through Utah. Get up into Wyoming, and it's dark and it's cold, and it had snowed, but it wasn't snowing at the time. And I'm driving, and the truck allegedly had a top speed of 109 miles an hour. And that was on a soft limiter, which means you can keep your foot on the floor and it just stays at 109. Hard limiter, usually you'll see them drop back in speed and they come back up again and that kind of stuff. This was really nice. So thank you, Chevrolet, for that. We just had the foot on the floor, allegedly, most of the way through Wyoming. But the snow, the wind was blowing so much. The snow was blowing across the road like a river of white. And it just looked like it was flowing, like some kind of slow motion photography. It was gorgeous in the headlights. And when you're sitting at high speeds for a long period of time, everything kind of slows down and gets quieter than you think it is, because your ears get used to it, your eyes get used to it. And it became immensely zen. Like, I was the highway samurai or road warrior, so to speak, right? You just out there, quiet, everything's flowing. It was such a beautiful state of mind for quite some time, until trucks started getting a little loose. I'm like, I think things are getting icy. There weren't a lot of cars out there. We come up on a car, and we're in the passing lane. He's in the slow lane. And he starts wiggling. And we're coming up on him at quite a clip. And I get off the gas because I can kind of see it happening. And then all of a sudden, he breaks loose. And this all happened in like slow motion. His car rotates into the passing lane. Now, in an icy situation at speed, the worst thing you could do is jam on the brakes, because you have no traction and you're just a missile, you're a projectile at that point. So instead, you get on the gas, which gives you some opportunity to drive the car. So I get on it, turn around him, get into the slow lane. He pivots around us like something out of a movie. And it was almost like, as he pivoted around us, it just like eye contact as he's spinning away. And he just spins around us perfectly, just missing him. And he goes into the embankment, the center embankment. I get off the gas and start slowing down at a more reasonable rate. You can kind of see his headlights pointed up in a direction. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope this guy's okay. We come over the top as we get into more reasonable speeds. And as we came over the top of this hill, there are cars everywhere. And there are police vehicles and rescue vehicles. And obviously, these people had all hit this patch. And later on, there must have been 6 cars out there. So we pull over and stop. And Pierce gets out of the car and goes over to one of the police officers. And like, this guy just spun out about a quarter mile back. He's on the embankment. Cops all, get back in your car. He's like, you need to understand, there is somebody, your job is to help people. There is somebody who needs help back there. He goes, you don't get in your car, I'm giving you a ticket. And Pierce tried a third time. He's like, just so you know, just so it's not on me, it's on you. There is somebody in trouble over there. Yes, now get back in your car or we're gonna have your truck towed. I'm like, okay. So we left. And I really hope, maybe that guy's watching right now. I hope everything was okay with you. But the police wouldn't let us do anything. So we just took off from there. And that environment all through Wyoming for the entire state. And it was gorgeous. And it didn't really slow us down that much. I think we dropped down allegedly into the 90s just to be safe. But we drove the rest of the night like that. And then we got out of Wyoming and we're driving 80. And 80, the traditional route of the 2904 in reverse. Know most of the stops. And we make a stop for fuel. Again, we don't have a spare fuel tank. This is just a rental car. And Pierce is like shopping for cowboy hats and things. We're buying each other weird gifts. And I'm kind of like, we really need to get going. And he's like, well, we're just doing this for fun. I'm like, maybe we're not just doing this for fun. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, I may have invited some other people to do this. And that's when I had to tell him there were other teams on the road that I had organized that we were actually doing a race. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah. There's guys coming from Pennsylvania. There's guys coming from the South. There's guys coming from everywhere. And we got to beat them. And then, suddenly it was on. And Pierce is like, yeah, now we're doing this. So we pack up our stuff and we really started pushing it so hard. Now, Pierce is one of my favorite high-speed drivers. He always has been since we were kids. I've never seen somebody so confident and calm behind a wheel at speed as he does. And unfortunately, he's too claustrophobic to be in a race car, which we found out early on with The Sopranos. But in a road car, magnificent. He drove like crazy. Scotty drove beautifully. And the idea was to take 80 all the way across, and then when we got above Kansas, go straight down to Kansas. We get to that point, and we're doing the math, and we realize we're going to be like 2 hours early or more, that we were going too fast. We were ahead of schedule. And we're like, oh, damn. Well, let's just keep driving. So we just kept driving. We drove all the way to Des Moines, Iowa, like a whole nother state. And then we're like, maybe it's time to turn back around. And we turned back around, we drove back 80. Then we headed down into Kansas. And then we realized we're still early. We drive all the way down to Kansas is a lot of just kind of square roads, north, south, east, west kind of roads. And we just start doing boxes down towards this spot. We come up to it and we realize we're 15 minutes early. And it's actually people already there. They'd already parked. And we come up and we're like, hi, and we turned around and kept driving. And we're doing considerable speeds on these 2-lane back roads in Kansas. And all I could think of, and Pierce is driving, and I'm like, this is not the moment we want to get a ticket. Like, this is not in some, rural cop's going to nail us in the middle of nowhere and we'll be late and then we'll be penalized. But it all worked out. And I think we pulled up maybe 1 minute before time, which I think was noon, and roll up and there's guys that are already there. My friend BJ Barger, who lives in Kansas, had spent the last 2 days spending all night making us a trophy, a gorgeous 18 trophy out of car parts. He's standing there with the trophy. All the guys are there. Pierce is just beaming, right? And because this was all his idea. As you probably imagine, we won. And I think we covered just over 1,600 miles in 18 hours, which I think was the average of like a little over 90 miles an hour, which was faster average than I ever did a cannonball in. Of course, most of my cannonballs were in junky old cars. So it was the first time where I'm like, oh, this is much easier in a nice car. Like, yeah, maybe Ed had the right idea doing it in a fancy AMG Mercedes. That made things a little bit easier than doing it in a crap can old car and Subarus like I did. But that was definitely fast. The other cars did great. Everybody made it there. And we had a big party, as much as you can in a small town in Kansas. That, to me, is how you celebrate your best friend's 50th birthday.
When you get a ticket, it might look something like this, but the first thing that you need to do is take a picture of that ticket and send it to 305. That will get the ticket clinic on your case immediately. They've got brick and mortar offices in Georgia, Florida, and California, but they can help you find a ticket no matter where you get it in the United States by helping you find a local attorney that will do everything they can to help you avoid costly fines, insurance premium increases, points on your license, risk of suspension, even jail time. They've helped me out with this ticket and many others, and a lot of my friends as well. So check them out now at the link in the description below, or again, text your ticket to 305-305 to get the ticket clinic on your case. They are the perfect partner in your fight against any speeding ticket.